mother and father met at the Colchester School of Art, I think it was in 1932, and they got married in 1938, I think it was. They went to live in London. Unfortunately, they were bombed during the war and came back to Colchester, and my mother found a rather unusual type of flat in Church House at Lexton, which she thought would be fine for a few years, and they lived there for the rest of their life.
I always got great enjoyment of going to Henry and Joyce's studio. The smell of turpentine, and on Saturday evenings, the smell of celery, toast, Marmite, which they would have for tea, electric fire on in their studio, and always something going on.
I would go into their studio, which was very small and full of paintings. There was an easel in one corner where Henry always worked, and Joyce always worked near the window, and she would be painting, and they always had a cup of tea in a blue and white mug that was by their easel, and the studio was incredibly colourful and lots of objects around, which in fact have ended up in lots of their paintings. My garden ran past his house, and of course there was always the smell of paint when you passed it. It was such a strange sort of life. He had long hair and he looked an artist, and I always felt, passing people in my road, in Burgolt Road it was, they thought we were, rather, aren't they a funny lot, if you know what I mean. Joyce was really well known for painting cranes, industrial sites.
Henry, of course, was interested in all sorts of methods of painting. We have some watercolours. He was interested in painting in oils, and also, of course, screen printing, which he did. I think he, in particular, was very, very good at painting nautical scenes and scenes from the East Coast, and of course was particularly famous for the colour known colloquially as Henry Blue, which his skies tended to be, and you can almost recognise a Henry painting by the colour of the sky, which appears in paintings which he did outside.
They covered all sorts of different aspects of art. They did a lot of work for the Festival of Britain in 1951, which really set them up, I think. People started to recognise that they were important artists. To bring it more up to date, the first mural was for Sainsbury's in Priory Walk in Colchester. This led to other murals at various locations across the country for Sainsbury's and British Home Stores. As well as concrete murals, they also did wooden murals painted in various forms of art. There was examples of their work across the country, and they became quite well renowned for these concrete murals. And in all these cases across the country, my mother would go to the town or city in which they were going to be based. She would do considerable research on the history of the city and come back with various ideas as to what you would include in the murals. Now, the concrete murals were developed in conjunction with the firm of Huttons at Birch.
Huttons is a local building contractor with a very long tradition and history within the area and throughout East Anglia. Back to when these murals were made, we were predominantly doing concrete products and general builders as we are now. And we were fortunate enough to have two artists that were commissioned to make these murals and chose Huttons as the contractors to build them for them.
They used to mix the stuff up in the area there, bring it through and put it in the moulds which is on the vibrating table here. And they used to vibrate them and do and level it all off, lift the moulds off and then let it go off and then stand them up. They used to come along, they used to have chain blocks, what they used to lift them up with to stand them up, the big murals. They had a timber across as well as that, and they used to stand them up. Then the artist and his wife used to pick all the polystyrene out, and then they used to do the painting in them. Well, Francis Wadley, he was the old governor's son, one of the governor's sons, and in the end he took over the company with two other chaps. The bald chap here is Harry Charlie, and he was in the Japanese prisoner of war camp. I'm certain that's what he was in. Some say he was in another one of the other camps, but I think that was the Japanese he was in. He was a very nice chap, and he, as John said, he used to look after mice and rats in here because I was his friends in the camp. He used to mix the stuff up, and if the stuff weren't quite wet enough, he used to have an old saucepan and he used to keep flicking a little bit more water until it came to the right mix, because if that was too wet, that wouldn't vibrate so good.
The artists and the tradesmen that were involved had an astounding attention to detail that is, not required necessarily so much today.
Jack Corston, he used to be a site agent on the firm, and when they started making the murals, they brought him in here because he was so much of a perfectionist. That's why they brought him in here. And he worked for a fag paper or a bee's wing, as they used to say.
What does that mean, work with a fag paper?
Well, if he was doing anything and that had to be level, he'd say, it's a fag paper low when he was looking. And I always remember one chap putting a fag paper under it, and he put the level stick back on it. He said, that's dead right now. Now, the fag paper isn't much, is it? So it wouldn't have mattered to really. So, things had to be right dead on where he was.
Back in those times, things were less mechanical, and it relied on those people who had those skills to be able to come up with the murals that we've seen and stand the test of time even today, which is fantastic.
The whole thing was very bright to start with, and obviously with weathering it does deteriorate.
The ones I'd seen I felt were either in need of taking away and storing, or they were certainly in need of repainting and regilding.
I mean, they were extremely clever, but they were never appreciated. I don't know why that was.
These things still exist, and it's really good to know that there are people that are prepared to invest time and money in restoring them.
We started this project originally maybe 3 years ago, and it became obvious that these pieces needed restoring. They were falling to pieces. One of them was almost falling off. It was very loose and the backgrounds didn't look good. And all murals throughout the country, not just ours here, are endangered species.
This is a project, a collaborative project between Colchester Civic Society and Colchester in Bloom, and we've been working together to raise funds for the restoration of the murals in the subways. We initially got funding and support from the Essex Heritage Trust, which was fantastic because that enabled us to do a feasibility. And once we'd done the feasibility, we did a test restoration on the Abbeygate Street mural. We were so impressed by the results, we thought this has to be a bigger project and we need to restore all of the subways. So we then developed a bid to the Heritage Lottery Fund and to the Harvey Benham Trust, and we were really fortunate we were successful in both of those bids. And now we can start the restoration of all of the murals right across the Southway subways. So it's going to be fantastic.
We're just in the process of restoring these murals here underneath a massive A road in Colchester. So there's two kind of very distinct phases with the conservation of these murals. The first is a kind of reinstatement of what was intended to be around the reliefs, which were mosaic panels that apparently weren't ever realised because they ran out of money when they were initially conceived. So this first stage that we're doing at the moment is putting where there were once kind of painted panels, screeded painted panels, we're actually replacing those with mosaic panels. So we're doing it in kind of big steps really, just kind of getting as many people as we can to do it as quickly as possible. But we have been able to do a lot of the preparation off-site in terms of these panels, which means that we're not working so much on-site and just disrupting the public as little as possible. The next phase will be to actually do the conservation work to all the concrete murals, which will involve cleaning, little bits of repair work. Some of the tesserae have fallen out on the originals, so we'll be replacing all those. And then also there was quite a big gilding scheme involved within the original ones. So like the coins behind me, you might have been able to see kind of the boat in gold, but we haven't done any of the analysis yet to understand exactly where the gold was. So the next phase will understand exactly where the gold was and reinstate all the gilding that was there as well.
The characters portrayed, Udo Dapifer and my little friar here, and William Gilbert and so on, one does wonder how much people do actually know about these characters.
No, you imbecile. I want this castle built directly on top of these Roman remains. Sorry about that. It's beginning to feel like the English don't even want me here. I am Udo de Ré, the fourth son of Lord Henri de Ré, High Steward of Normandy. I have graced the English with my presence. Well, if I have to explain everything to you, we may as well start at the beginning. My fellow Normans and I travelled all the way from France in a brave quest to prove the superiority of our king, Guillaume le Conquérant. William brought 7,000 soldiers, almost 400 miles from Normandy to England's south coast, where we proved ourselves in the Battle of Hastings. It is rumoured that our opponent, Harold Hardrada, was shot in the eye with an arrow. Non, idiot! It's hard to find good workers these days. Anyway, after the success of our soldiers, I was lucky enough to have been given some land. For my services, I gained lands in Hertfordshire, Berkshire, Bedfordshire, Northamptonshire, Cambridgeshire, Huntingdonshire, Hampshire, Norfolk, Suffolk, and of course Essex. Now, of course, I didn't just acquire land, I did things to help your ancestors. You see, I was in England for a very long time. I served under 3 kings, William I, William II, and Henry I. After William I's death in 1087, I began on some exciting work here in Colchester, such as one of my finest additions, St. Mary Magdalene Hospital. Sadly, no longer around, so you are not able to visit it. Oh well, how about I show you something you can go and see. I founded St. John's Abbey in 1096, around the same time that I founded the hospital. You can also visit me right in the center of town, and if you look closely, you can see that I'm featured on the side of the town hall. Not bad. Très bien, très bien. Well, as you can see, my influence can be seen all over your little English town. I think I'm a little fond of it, if I'm honest. Mes chers amis anglais, this is where we depart. Au revoir et à bientôt.
Having installed all the panels that we made off-site, which we did to kind of minimise the amount of time we had on-site, we are now feathering in all the tesserae to kind of bring it up alongside all the roundels. So, as you can see, what Jamie's doing in this area is, this is where the panel ends and the coin begins. So we're just going around and putting in the mosaic tesserae so that they form a nice border around. As you can see, Jamie's kind of finished this area here. And we're having to cut all these tesserae to fit really nicely so that you have a nice border around the coin, and then all this grid set pattern looks like it just runs behind it. The next process is to kind of grout the whole thing, and then those panels are kind of ready and finished except for the steel frame border that we're going to put around in the next phase. So that'll be the end of that. It's just a matter of snipping, a lot of snipping of the tesserae, just to get the right shapes. So fairly time consuming, but quite an enjoyable job once you get into it. The tesserae, which are glass, will be pretty much exactly the same fabrication method that these were made with originally. Obviously with modernisation of kind of machinery, they will be slightly different, probably a bit more uniform, but in the most part, they're identical with the same striations as the originals and all that. So yeah, these are the kind of tools they would have been using to cut in half, and then probably using similar cementitious adhesives to hold the tesserae in place. Actually, with this one, you can see small amounts of gilding that have managed to remain in place. So it looks from kind of first sight that potentially some of this head was gilded, if not all of it. And there's also, we've found in most cases, gilding around some of the lettering. So we're yet to understand exactly what's going to be going on with the re-gilding, but there's a possibility that a vast amount of this will be gilded again. If it's bad weather, we can't, do certain parts of the project, like use certain adhesives or chemicals that we want to use. We can't do any of the painting, so obviously it just holds us back if we can't use those certain things at the right time. And we were quite lucky that we could set up just kind of really basic canopies to stop too much of the weather, but it just meant that everything is so much more difficult in the wet. You're just kind of constantly trying to keep bags of things that are supposed to be dry, and you're trying to just kind of fend off all this weather all the time. It's just a bit disheartening. It just slows everything down.
Hello everyone, I'm William Gilbert. I'm a philosopher, physician and an astronomer. Some call me the founding father of the electrical industry. You'll find that my book, Demagneting, is still published today. Let's get into my book then. I was born all the way back in 1554, on the 24th of May. Ah, how young and dapper I looked. At the Colchester Free Grammar School, I discovered my love for science. I graduated from Cambridge University with a master's. Oh, no, my hat! I was the first to conclude that the Earth is magnetic by studying the behaviour of a compass. The Earth itself is a gigantic magnet with a north and south pole, and it is the North Pole that the compass points to. I even realised before Galileo, I may add, that the movement of stars was due to the rotation of the Earth. I think I'd better get back and comfortable in my spot now. Oh, I do feel like I need some freshening up. If you want to see me again, you can find me at the Butt Road Underpass.
So we're giving the coins a clean before the gilding starts. They've been dry brushed already by Chris. And now I'm going over with water and a non-ionic detergent just to try and get the more ingrained sulfation and dirt off. And then we'll rinse it again with clean water and let them dry off. And then Simon will come along with Kirsty and start laying the ground for the gold.
Now that these are being cleaned, we're just putting on, it's a gilder's enamel, and it's a good base coat for the mica surface that we're going to have, because we can do a lot of filling with this and it produces a really nice surface to paint on. Actually came a couple of weeks ago and took very small samples and then took them back to the lab and did cross-section analysis. So when we did that, we found that there was this yellow ground, traces of which can still be seen, which is very similar to what we're reinstating here. And also we found that the original gold scheme was a bronze paint and not a gilded scheme. There was no evidence of any gold sizing or anything on any of the examples. And we took cross sections from each coin, and it all had the same stratigraphy. So it was this yellow ground followed by bronze paint, and then in some cases it had been overpainted later with other paints. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to reinstate the original scheme as closely as possible to how it was. But instead of using bronze paints that degrade quite badly and produce like copper corrosion products and then this sort of blackening and dark surface like this sort of thing that you get, we're going to use mica, which is like the modern equivalent. It's conservation grade and it won't degrade in the same way.
So we've got our oil-based medium, which we're adding now fine gold powder to try and get the right density gold. We've got a formula that we've got roughly from the workshop which we made, so we're going to try that first. Once we've got the mix and the consistency right, we'll go and test it.
Well, I'm really glad they've been done up because I like coming through here and they're so much better than they used to be, and it's a joy to see them.
Hi, I'm Marcus Favonius Facilis, and I'm a centurion for the 20th Legion on my way to Camula Dunum. Come on, Jumbo. Now, did you know that Favonius means favourable? Well, now you do. Shh. What's that noise?
Get him!
Oh, some locals. Take that.
We surrender!
Well, that was easy. Now, you're working for me.
All done, boss.
Oh, finally, all finished. Everything was great until that Boudica came along in 60 AD.
Death to the Romans.
Woohoo! I'm free!
We're just testing the gold paint that we've mixed up alongside other gold paints we mixed up to see what we think is the best.
I've always been fascinated by these murals in the subways, and to learn more about them was absolutely fascinating. So to see them looking so sad and uncared for was disappointing. And now look at them, they look absolutely fantastic. And I've had a number of people come up to me and comment how great they look, and that they hope that we can keep them in this state for a long while now.
It's making such a difference. They are just totally being just changed into something brand new. And everyone's gasping and very excited how they look now.
It's really important that any public realm, any walkway, any street scene feels nice. You know, so whether that's an alleyway that could be better lit, or whether it's extra trees, extra flowers, and extra public art. And that's why this is a really good idea.
I think it's a fantastic job that you've done already, and I look forward to the completion of this underpass.
Well, I don't think they were appreciated doing these murals until recently, probably, when they've been restored. And then people begin to think and look.
I walk through here every day, and this subway is a bit grim, you know. And these, until recently, were just sort of like little concrete things, and they've been sort of spruced up and brought to life. And they make, first of all, they make me smile. And the other thing I was thinking about, which is why I wanted to talk to you, how if a broken window is left undealt with, other things get vandalised, but if you actually sort of fix it, then there's a knock-on effect. And this reminds me of that because, you know, talking to you and talking to some other people, what I'm seeing is that this rather grim subway, people are now saying, wow, if you can do this, you can change the subway, and the council has started to do something on the walls here, and I'm rather hoping that this might sort of make this a rather lovely thoroughfare into Colchester. So basically, you know, good on you, is basically what I want to say, so thank you.
This just brightens the whole area. It makes the underpasses, which are sort of pretty daunting, a lot more acceptable, and people hopefully will use them more. And now we've done this, I mean, they really have to be kept at a very high standard, because I think people will be coming here from all over just to see our murals once the job's finished.
Absolutely brilliant. It's coloured everything up, it's made it look brighter and tidier, and it brings out the culture of Colchester, so I love it, yes.